We flew in from Chicago to Krakow here in Poland to be a part of the 75th commemorative event for the Sinti Roma people, people that have been displaced and dispersed all over Europe. They have a history of over 600 years in this region alone. They were some of the first persons to have been killed by Hitler and the Nazis. This is Birkenau. Birkenau was an extermination camp. These are barbed wire fences. These are electric prods where the people would run into them. They would be electrified. We just left Auschwitz, which was the work camp and the concentration camp, and here's where people came to be murdered in mass numbers.
We rounded up 6 million Jews and 500,000 Romans, all called gypsies. They killed them. The idea of white nationalism, ethnic purity, have no place in a democratic society. A civilized world is a threat to all of us. So we're here today to say, whether it's in America or Europe, no to white nationalism, no to ethnic purity. Let's affirm the rights of the women who speak out in America. Affirm Max, affirm Elijah Cummings. We have an obligation to speak up and speak out before it's too late.
What's so phenomenal to see is that I've seen many factories and many plants, literally hundreds in my lifetime, but to see a death factory, an industrialized plan to kill so many people is heart-wrenching. And to think that the greatest scientists of their day and their time, the engineers, the persons that were responsible for the manufacture of Porsche and Volkswagen and Audi and great technological engineers, people that had worked on spacecraft, had put their minds to working on a plan to oven bake, to sterilize people, to kill them with asphyxiation, and then to burn their bodies and remains. This goes to show you a part of our history that all people should remember and never forget. And I can also see so many similarities between what happened over here and things that we've experienced in our own civil rights movement in the States. If you go down to Mississippi and look at Yazoo County and see Parchman Penitentiary, it has the same footprint of barbed wire on 20,000 acres. When you think of sterilization, I think of all these young African-American men that have been called a menace to society, that are picked up in their youth and are been put out of work in the prime of their life. That's a sterilization technique. Same thing that happened over here is happening in our country as well. And now the winds of hatred, where there's division, is blowing, where it's at the border. It's don't let the Mexicans in, and saying disparaging things about them. When you hear about it, saying things about the Muslims, don't let them in our country. When you hear things about African American and Puerto Rican and Muslim women, saying send them back home, it's that same putrid and caustic words that you can hear the echo of history and time. Unless we stand up, our challenge now is not to be silent. And the problem comes when good people do nothing. It's not enough to see it, you have to do something about it. And our scriptures teach us at the end of the day to do justice and to love kindness. It's time for people to act and do justice, stop the walls of division, and to lastly, here's so many people that were survivors of Buchenwald and Auschwitz that are still alive, that tell their story, and they told their stories today, and saying how the memory was trying to be erased, and that they stand here as living testimony, and they will never forget, and they spend the rest of their lives sharing this atrocity. So it's been a heart-wrenching experience and an eye-opening and a life lesson, and God bless the Sinti and the Roma people that are now affirming themselves. And they've just gotten recognized by the United Nations in their atrocity. 500,000 people had gotten killed in World War II. They are too victims of the Holocaust, but it was just recognized in 2011. So there's a spirit of the people around the world waking up to recognize their history, and it's a great time to be alive. I'll be in Chicago at the Rainbow Push Coalition giving further detail, and it's one string of humanity. To think that our modern civil rights movement, if you will, started with Henry David Thoreau and civil disobedience, and he was a reader of the Bhagavad Gita, the Indian religious doctrine, And in turn, Mahatma Gandhi learned from Henry David Thoreau on what civil disobedience was and took that to South Africa and on to India. And the Reverend Martin Luther King and Daddy King and other ministers, Reverend Lawson and Dr. Howard Thurman, learned from Mahatma Gandhi, who learned from Henry David Thoreau. One fabric, one thread, one garment in history to fight for human dignity and humanity. To fight ignorance is our challenge. And so when you fight ignorance, you can get to the truth, and only when you get to the truth can you get some healing and some hope.